my deal this week is that I marathoned all of the Twilight movies this
I cannot
weekend.
wait to hear the rationale for this.
This is like the 12-hour cinematic equivalent of, oh, this milk smells bad. Do you want to smell this?
Right? Welcome to Feminist Frequency Radio. This is episode number 2. I am your host, Anita Sarkeesian, and I am joined by my lovely co-host, Carolyn Pettit.
Hello.
And Ebony Astor.
Hey, people.
This is the show that asks you to be critical of the media you love, or alternatively titled, Feminist Killjoys Are Coming for Your Media, depending on your perspective. On today's show, we're going to see what's happening this week in the world of pop culture. We're going to maybe aggressively hate on the Justice League and maybe gush over The Good Place. And we're going to end with What's Your Deal, which I still think is the worst title ever, where we'll each share something we've been thinking about lately. And for those of you who are lovely, wonderful Drip members, we have a very special bonus segment for you. We're going to dive a little bit more into the Justice League. And Carol came up with a fun little game. Donald Trump or Metal Gear Solid character? I just wanted to start this off with a huge, huge, huge thank you to all of our supporters. We launched our membership program last week with the first episode, and so many of you signed up to be a part of this. Drip is Kickstarter's new monthly crowdfunding subscription service. Mm-hmm. Our podcast is listener-supported, so if you like what you hear, please consider chipping in. You can visit d.rip/femfreak, which is the weirdest URL to say, but there you go. d.rip/femfreak. We also want to thank our podcast host, Simplecast. They are a new hosting service that's been really helpful getting us up and running. So if you're looking for a new podcast host, go check them out at simplecast.com. All right, y'all.
Okay.
Let's do podcast number 2. Yeah.
Let's do it.
We're once again scattered to the winds. Anita, you're still in Sweden this week.
Yep.
Right? Is it still getting dark at like 3 p.m. for you over there?
Sure
I assume
is.
it is.
Yeah, sure is. It keeps getting darker a little bit earlier every day.
That's the worst.
It also means that I'm sleeping in really late. Like late for me at least, right? Because it's
I was
so
going to
dark.
say, late for you is like what? A smooth 4:15 a.m.
I don't wake up that early. No, it's still really dark. But, you know, I learned... So, cinnamon buns are a big thing here. And as many times as I've been to Sweden, nobody has ever taken me to get cinnamon buns. And I found a place that has the best ones, and I'm so excited. I will bring some back for you to try.
I want to interject right here to say I've been privy to some cinnamon bun chat from Anita. Also, it did happen real early in the morning. So one, I know for a fact none of these cinnamon buns or cardamom buns are going to make it my way. So whatever, Anita. But also...
Well, they aren't now with that attitude.
You were never going to send me a cardamom bun.
Maybe we'll make some.
Who's we?
Ebony, I know this really... I know this great place at the mall. It's called Cinnabon. I will take you there for an amazing
What's it called
cinnamon
again?
Bun.
Cinnabon?
Cinnabon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds exotic. I'm into it.
Yeah.
Oh, great. All right, Caro, want to check us in on some pop culture this week?
Boy, do I. So one of the big stories this week is that Amazon has acquired the rights and is moving forward with plans to create a Lord of the Rings prequel television series. You know, because for those of us for whom the 18 hours of Middle-earth storytelling that Peter Jackson and crew generated with the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogies just isn't enough. They're going to be making more. And I, as a Tolkien fan, have a lot of, concerns about this because... So the article that I read, and I think everything is pure speculation at this point because Amazon hasn't really made it clear what they're drawing from or what the story is going to be. But, the piece that I read kind of speculated that maybe they're kind of trying to get in on the kind of Game of Thrones market, right? But if Amazon goes that route, it will be such a kind of betrayal of Tolkien because, Game of Thrones, it has dragons and swords and stuff, just like Tolkien does, but It's about like political machinations and betrayals, and it's a soap opera.
I thought it was about a ring.
Tolkien,
There's
no,
like
no,
Game
I'm
of
talking
Thrones.
about.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And
The nerds
and
are gonna.
Tolkien's-
They are already furiously
I
typing
thought we
in
were
the
talking
Twitter.
about Lord of the Rings. Sorry. All right.
No.
Sorry.
So
Just
Tolkien's,
ignore me.
Tolkien's, Middle Earth saga is really, it's intended to work as like a myth. It's not a soap opera at all. It doesn't have those kinds of like those backstabbings and things. It is, Tolkien was concerned about a few things like fostering an attitude of that the natural world is sacred, right? He was kind of anti-industrialization, and so like that was a big theme of his. Also, the corrupt, like the idea that power corrupts. That's kind of what the part of what Lord of the Rings is all about. Even Frodo, who's like the purest, person who can possibly bear the ring, ends up corrupted by it before he can give it up. So, I just worry that.
Yeah, but that article was totally speculating, right? The idea that it's going to be like Game of Thrones was just like one person saying one thing.
That's totally true, but the reason that I already have these concerns too is because we have these Middle Earth Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War video games, right? Which have like the Tolkien license and everything, but totally are all about there's such a like twisted betrayal of Tolkien's ideas because they're all about like. I mean, the narrative of those games is kind of like, oh yeah, look, you're kind of bad. This power is like corrupting you, but it's meant to be like badass. Like, yeah, I'm gonna dominate these orcs. I'm gonna control it. And inherently as a player, like that stuff feels really good. So, which Tolkien I think would have been mortified because I just think it's a very contemporary. It reflects our contemporary values, which Tolkien, in some sense, would have been very opposed to. So I just hope that I have no idea what stories they would even draw from or what they would do, but I really hope that if they go forward with the show, it's somehow true to Tolkien's themes and his ideals. But I think that that's going to be a hard sell in our kind of, Game of Thrones-y.
It's really cute right now because Carolyn has her fingers crossed. Fingers crossed to be like, please don't be bad.
There are intense emotions on display here. Carol, I have two words for you: Tom Bombadil. Huh?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. Give me a whole Tom Bombadil series,
right? I remember so clearly when the Lord of the Rings trilogy hit, just like the wave of people who were furious that Tom Bombadil wasn't included. And we haven't yet heard that this time around, but I want to represent for those people, for the people who are like, what about old Toms?
Yeah. So, we'll see. Obviously, it could be fine. It could be great. But I'm just very cautious. I'm very guarded about where this is going. In other news, so people announced their sexiest man alive this past week, and it's some dude I'd literally never heard of before
are you
the
serious?
announcement was made.
You never heard of Blake Sheldon?
No, is he like a country singer? Or
yeah, he's a country singer, and he's one of the judges on The Voice.
Oh, okay. I don't watch The Voice, but now I really
I can't believe I know something. I can't believe I know something that Carolyn doesn't know. That's
that's because Anita, you keep up with Gwen Stefani's love life so avidly that you're always well aware of who she's currently partnered with. So yeah, Blake Shelton is also Gwen Stefani's boo.
Wait,
right?
Currently?
And currently.
Whoa.
Although the way after the way he's been getting dragged across social media for being named People's Sexiest Person, I wouldn't be surprised if she moonwalks out of his life just to try and avoid the blowback.
So there's been a lot of uproar in certain circles about this is the guy you pick, and to me it's I'm not gonna talk. I'm no judge for his appearance, and I don't want to get into that. But what's interesting to me is who's voting on these decisions because in the whole past 20 years, there's only been one man of color chosen as the sexiest man alive. And this guy, he's just okay, another white dude, I don't know.
But isn't
it just
Blake
seems-
Shelton like the perfect choice for Trump's America? I mean,
That's
for real.
okay. That's exact.
For real?
I
mean,
did not want to say it. Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, just like when you think about, first of all, who's still buying People magazine, right? I think it's probably older women readers who are reading it.
Yeah.
So I think like he is perfectly designed to appeal maybe to that demographic, to people who watch The Voice, the kind of maybe NASCAR country crowd who are gonna love it, because I think he does clearly have a bunch of supporters. But also, we know that like People's Sexiest Man is just an annual kind of like PR grab. It's just who's got something big coming up. But no matter what Blake Shelton has going on, is it big enough to justify? I mean, this is not sexiest man in America, sexiest man in music, whatever. Like, those things would be bad enough. But sexiest man alive, like of everyone in the world.
All right, so I think, I was, we internally shared the articles that were like, what, why? But also, there's a little bit like I just feel bad, like, ripping someone apart for their appearance because they're not as hot as the other guy, right? Like I think it's a really bizarre choice as well, and I don't think that's what you're doing either. But like, there are all these articles being like, "Are you kidding me? Look at all these other men who are hotter." And like, attractiveness is so subjective that even the concept of having a sexiest man alive is ludicrous.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I didn't want. That's why I'm like, yeah, you can consider him extremly attractive,
which is obviously Jason Momoa. Except now that I've seen the Justice League, I might have to reconsider that.
So before we move forward, just one more super quick thing from the world of entertainment. So, do y'all know who the one man of color selected in the past 20 years was?
I was going to say Denzel, but did that predate 20 years? Is that more than 20 years old? Will Smith?
Must be. No. Okay, so it was The Rock. And The Rock has, so yesterday, just real quick, a trailer dropped for an upcoming movie of The Rock, which is called Rampage. Rampage was a video game in the 80s where you played as a giant monster destroying cities. And like there's no plot to that game whatsoever. So, the only reason this movie is called Rampage is so that people like me who have positive associations with the Rampage brand are like, ooh, I want to go see that movie. So unless we see Peoria, Illinois get destroyed in that movie, it is not a faithful adaptation of the Rampage video game.
I would love for that to be the most niche thing we say in this podcast, but I doubt it will be. But I love that Carol, that you were like, this movie is for people like me who have a
yeah,
and I do hope that they're like marketing meetings where they're like, but what about the Carolyn Pettit demographic? What are they clamoring for?
That's the only reason to give this movie the Rampage license. That's all. It could be called anything.
Oh my god. This is Anita from the future, and we're about to say that there's going to be spoilers in our Justice League conversation, but there really aren't. So don't worry, you can still listen. All right. How about we talk about the Justice League? Even though I would love that. Can we just not? Like, can we just be like, no, it's not even worth our time.
You made me pay $15 American to go see this movie. We're gonna talk about it. Let's talk about it right now.
Okay, before we get into anything having to do with the actual substance of the movie, I have to say this really quick. I read a review before I went to see the movie, and it mentioned that they had to do a lot of reshoots on the film.
You're kidding.
And, no, shocker. But, like, unexpected or unplanned reshoots. And during the time that they, were done, Henry Cavill, is that how you say his name? Grew a mustache.
Y'all, Carol, this is such old news.
No, please keep going because this leads into my main question was about Henry Cavill. So please go on.
I just have to say that to me, like watching the movie, there's shots in the movie where Henry Cavill's mustache has been digitally erased, right? So every time he's on screen, the only thing I'm doing is like scrutinizing his face to be like, is this one of those shots where they like digitally erased his mustache? Like,
thank you for explaining this to me, because my major, first of all, I know this is going to surprise everyone, but I am not a professional movie reviewer, so I don't have one of those cool, like, light-up pens. So my notes that I took in the film are practically illegible. But the one that is very readable is the one that says, why does Henry Cavill look like hologram Tupac from Coachella? He just didn't look right. It was some weird, uncanny valley-ass shit. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. Was he actually part of the movie, or did they recreate him from pixels? It looked weird.
Yeah, it sure did. Here's the thing. Here's my question for fucking DC. Why in the hell did you not plan your reshoots and contract that in with your actors before they go on and like make physical appearance, like changes to their appearance that aren't like planned? I
think it would have been great if.
I mean,
wait
I
a minute.
assume.
Do we need to throw in the spoiler alert theme song? Like, are we just going to go ahead and spoil the shit out of this movie?
Let's just spoil the shit out of this movie. Let's just do it.
Okay. Well, so I was hoping, now that I know this, that they could have done something where, like, when Soups comes back from the dead, he came back with a mustache. That would have been awesome. Like, what kind of other world, what kind of afterlife was he living as a riverboat gambler?
Yeah,
that he came back with a handlebar mustache.
They'd have to digitally put on the mustache for some of those shots, right? So, like, half of them would be digitally removed and half of them would be digitally put back on. It wouldn't
have made the movie any more ridiculous than it already was. But listen,
that's true.
I know you did not like the movie, Anita, and before we started recording today, I was saying, I wasn't overwhelmed, I wasn't underwhelmed, I was just whelmed. There were parts that were entertaining enough, but I came into this knowing absolutely nothing about recent DC movies. The last Batman movie I saw was, I think, the first Christian Bale one. So I am wildly unqualified to talk about this movie. I had no idea what was going on. Carol, I really wish you would have been there for me, so I could have been like the old lady who's like, who's that? What's going on there? What's his backstory? Do they know each other?
Yeah, I'd be whispering. I'd be like, that's Superman.
Yeah, it was almost at that level, because I was like, I just don't care about this team in a way that, like, for all their faults and occasional missteps, I do care about the Avengers, like, as a team, as a gestalt, right? But that's because I've watched all of those movies, because I haven't watched the DC movies. This movie itself wasn't enough to get me to care about that team coming together. I don't know. But like I said, that's on me. That's on me. That's not on the movie. That's on me.
But Marvel has actually done work to create that caring, right? Like, they've actually built a universe in which those of, like, that, even if you don't, like, even if you didn't read comics growing up, you're still invested in these worlds because you're invested in the film universe, and you care about the different characters and they're recurring and all this stuff. I think one of DC's biggest problems is that they are trying to copy Marvel and they can't do it. Like, they just are not getting the right teams together to pull this off. And so, like, they need to do something totally different. They need to stop trying to copy a model that they can't quite get down.
Right. I mean, so in this film kind of tries to also function as like not the origin stories, but the introductions of like Cyborg and the Flash in the DC cinematic universe. So you get these scenes with their fathers, where it's like these would be like the emotional turning point scenes like late in the movie if they had their own kind of standalone origin story movie, but it just kind of jumps right to those points, and it's like, whoa, you're like throwing all this kind of emotional weight at me without, having developed like these characters at all. And it just felt really abrupt to me. It just felt like it was trying to do too much. As much as I really liked the Flash, in some moments, like, I get not understanding brunch, right? I get not understanding human beings. I'm like,
right.
I'm with you on some of that, dude. Totally.
Yeah, I thought the Flash was a really great audience insert for the movie. Kind of saying the things that the audience would like to say. I thought he was, kind of cute as a young audience insert.
I had a hard time with that representation of him because I watched the show and it just felt so it was hard for me to remedy the fact that I had spent all this time with one type of the Flash, and now I'm spending time with a different like representation of the Flash, and I thought a lot of the jokes just didn't work. Like, he was clearly there for like, the comedic and whatever, and sometimes it was fine, and sometimes it wasn't. Like, God, I did not. I clearly hated this movie more than everybody else.
The movie has reduced you to just making random sounds, Anita.
So there's a quote from a Vanity Fair review. Richard Lawson just like tore this movie apart, and one of the things that he says in the review, I think, like really. Really is how I feel about this. He said, it's like having a little kid stutteringly recap a movie for you. And then this happened, and then this happened. Oh, wait, but also this happened, instead of watching an actual movie. Like, that's his quote. And I was like, yes, yeah. I walked out of the theater going, I need to think of a cohesive way to talk about this film, but it's a film that has no cohesion. Like, there's nothing holding it together. It is so all over the place, and it doesn't have any heart. It doesn't have any life to it. I don't care about any of these characters except in, like, teeny tiny little bits.
Okay, so... I think the one thing that brought a little heart to the film for me was Gal Gadot. Like, I think that she is good at looking. Okay, I know, but I think that she is so good at looking earnest and looking like noble and everything that whenever the camera like showed.
That's all she does.
Right, but
she makes one facial expression and one like action pose the whole movie.
Right, but it, for me, like, she's just, to me, she is beautiful in a way that, like as everybody a classic golden age of like a golden age of Hollywood, but I mean beautiful in like a golden age of Hollywood kind of way, where she just has a screen presence and she like radiates on the screen, and so it like she's definitely not a great actor, but her screen presence has a quality to it that communicates something in and of itself.
Look, if I had to see her ass one more goddamn time, I'm telling you, there was an upskirt shot that was clearly blacked out because you could see straight up her skirt. And then I'm telling you, not only did they show shots of her ass in leather pants over and over again, but I could see her ass cheeks out of the bottom of her skirt. And like this happened again and again and again. And I was thinking, this did not happen in the Wonder Woman movie. So either it's a different costume or it's very clearly that this is a Zack Snyder directed film and he's doing the shit he does where he sexualizes women in these like camera angles and like all of these ways that you
and it's so clearly deliberate because there will be shots that are composed such that we're coming up from the back on Wonder Woman, The Flash, Batman, whatever, and hers is the only ass that gets lovingly presented like mid-screen. Like there are the male asses get no screen time. Justice for male asses.
Yeah.
You see Batman's ass for like 2 seconds.
Protective butt coverings.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that so, okay, I gotta quickly, Cyborg, this was my first introduction to Cyborg, and he was the only person that I even gave a modicum of a shit about, and that was just barely. I thought that, like, there's some interesting stuff with him. I'm curious to see how they develop him throughout the universe, but also, like, this is grading on a huge curve here, right? Like, the only thing that
interesting, too.
Yeah, like I think that his power is interesting and like who he is and the way he played it was really interesting. The only moment that I felt any emotion whatsoever in this whole film other than rage was when Amy Adams was talking to Superman's mom. She is like, it's so hard for me to watch these amazing actors take these bullshit roles and like act their hearts out because they're the kind of like she's the kind of actor that can take crappy material and like do something with it. But like everyone else,
the movie
is
does
just, like,
not deserve her.
It totally doesn't.
The movie does not deserve Amy Adams.
Also, okay, the public doesn't know this, but I like think Justin Momoa is one of the hottest people in the entire world, and I was like, okay,
now.
That's right.
They know it now, which is fine because I don't really talk about that stuff because I don't like I don't think that that's relevant to a lot of these
want no
conversations.
static from Lisa Bonet is why you don't talk about it.
I also think they're the hottest couple in the whole world, so, whatever. But I was like, okay, well, at least, like, I enjoy him in general. Like, maybe Aquaman will bring something to this. Holy crap, was I wrong? Like, what were they doing with his character? That shot where he takes the bottle of, like, gin or whatever, and then the like, not White Stripes, but, like, the Jack White music comes up, and then he goes into the water, and he's, like, playing this sort of macho, posturing, brooding asshole.
Loved it.
Oh my God, I hated it. I thought it was
I wanted so much more Aquaman, and I can't wait for the Aquaman movie to come out.
It was so inconsistent.
The one amusing thing they did with that was, later he starts talking in this really uncharacteristic way, spilling his heart out. And you're like, oh my God, Aquaman, you're having this real moment. And then the gag is, oh, Wonder Woman got him with the lasso.
Okay,
and he's like,
I don't think that worked. Like, I get that people laughed at it, but I was like, oh my God, what the fuck bullshit are they doing now? This is so stupid. And this monologue is really dumb. And like, what? And like, it's supposed to be emotional, but it's not. And like, I didn't think it worked at all.
It worked for me. I mean, as part of the trope of like the reluctant superhero, the someone who has to be kind of like, the rugged individualist who kind of has to be dragged, kicking and screaming into the team dynamic. It worked for me. I loved that his name was Arthur. Like, just every time they called him Arthur, it made me laugh so hard. I also really enjoyed when Ben Affleck, when Bruce Wayne first goes to that Scandinavian fishing village, wherever that is. I'm not sure if we ever mentioned where it was. See, I was going to say that, I didn't know if it was actually Iceland, presented that way.
I didn't know that.
What.
But I watched in a theater where there were... Well, I watched in a theater that had Swedish subtitles, so anything that wasn't in English I couldn't understand because it was like, that's how I found out it was Icelandic, because I was like,
the only reason I asked is because I recognized the main guy that Bruce Wayne talks to as the main character from the movie Jar City, which is an amazing example of Scandi noir. So this is a callback to last week's episode about my obsession with Scandinavian crime drama. That's all I wanted to say. Except, no, it's not all I wanted to say, because Bruce Wayne comes in to that fishing village and it's a sea of white people. Okay, a sea of white people.
And it's a fishing village where they can't get their own fish?
Right. But he says, I'm looking for this guy. He's a little bit different. He's from it. He's really strong, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, do you not see the 7-foot-tall mixed race dude to your left? How do you not know that that's the superhero? Like, dude, come on. He's not like... Jason Momoa is going incognito in an Icelandic fishing village.
Oh, totally. And like, okay, can we at least agree that Ben Affleck is really boring just in general?
No.
Like, just what?
Oh, in general.
Like, he just as Batman is just, brings nothing to the role. It is so uninteresting.
I think that's what makes his Batman interesting, is that he's kind of this older, world-weary Batman. I just think it's, he's already like at the point where he needs to retire, right? He kind of knows it.
Yeah. All right. The one thing that there was a little Easter egg in there. I don't know if anyone caught it, but at the beginning, there's a newspaper that says, "Did they return to their planets?" And it was Bowie, and Prince. And I was like,
I almost got up and walked out of the theater.
I was like, I don't know if I love this or hate this. Like, I was really torn about that. I felt a little weird about it, but
You know where I bet Prince is right now?
Where?
In the real good place. In the real good place.
You know what? If they give podcast awards for segues, Carol, I think you just nailed it.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, let's so The Good Place is a show that we all genuinely like.
Yeah.
I was going through a bit of a rough time lately, and man, did watching that show lift my spirits. It really was just like this feel-good thing. And I was like sad when I ran out of episodes. Yeah.
One thing I really love about the show is I feel like the timeliness of it is so valuable right now. Like in a world, in an immensely chaotic world where every day we're learning about something absolutely dreadfully horrible. The Good Place is this shining beacon of a show that is just whimsical and funny and real, and like it's not apolitical, but it's also not political. And I really love that. Like there is there's a sense of like you can sort of just relax into this show and really enjoy yourself, but it's not like it doesn't comment on things subtly and by its very existence in the way that the characters, who was cast, how they treat the characters, all of that is so valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it's a show that, obviously ethics are literally a topic, a main subject matter within the show, right? Because the characters are all kind of trying to learn how to be better people. And so you have Chidi, who was like a ethics professor in life, actually teaching these classes where they get into all these ethical principles. And, the show treats them in a really funny and amusing way, but at the same time, it is actually in some ways concerned with what does it mean to live a good life, to be a good person? Like, how do we as people do that, right?
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Yeah, so this season, in the second season, they've brought up what I think is kind of one of the major ethical, like, thought experiments, which I just wanted to chat about with the two of you real quick, which is the trolley problem.
Yeah.
Right? The trolley problem being this sort of thought experiment of you're in a train, you're going down the track, and the train is on course to, like, hit 5 people if you don't do anything. You can pull a lever and the train will go down another track where it will kill 1 person, but you'll save the lives of the other 5 people. What do you do, right? And I find this actually, like, surprisingly difficult. I find it a really difficult thing to deal with. Like, I think there's so many things that can really complicate that. There's a game I really liked last year called Life is Strange, which basically at the end makes you make a similar choice. You can either save your friend who you've built this really close relationship with throughout the whole game, or you can save all these people in the town where you live. Either a bunch of people will die and your friend lives, or your friend dies and a bunch of people live. I did not even hesitate. I chose to save my friend and let all these other people die because I prioritized this one individual over everybody else. Which, does that make me a bad person? I don't know. But anyway.
I mean, that's part of why it's an ethical dilemma, right? Like, that's the tension.
Yeah.
And the scene in that episode where they play it out, I was
yeah.
Shit.
And poor Chidi just gets splashed with blood again and again.
So,
yeah.
Well, so the cast is amazing on that show. And, Anita, you had started to talk about that, but just the overall casting for that show, first of all, they play off each other so well. The chemistry is just fantastic among any, like, configuration. There's no weak link on the show, although I definitely have my favorite, which probably actually changes week to week. But just the way that naturally people of color are included in the show, that it's not an issue, that yes, of course, when we're talking about, like, the afterlife, it's not going to be primarily white, that just, like, without even having to mention it, just people exist from all over. I love that.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's so refreshing, and, like, it's so naturally done and incorporated into this world. And I love that they don't, like, they don't make their names, like, Anglified and make them easier to understand, right?
Exactly.
Like, it is a sort of universal space to some degree, like within the limits of, like, an American TV show, right? I think that Janet, played by Darcy Carden, is phenomenal.
She's amazing.
She's fantastic. Yep.
She's so
Janet
great.
And Michael are just every single week. Ted I had no real opinion about Ted Danson before this show. In fact, if I had any thought about him, it was kind of lingering suspicion based upon that 30-year-old blackface episode with Whoopi Goldberg, but he's completely redeemed himself in my eyes. Maybe that's unjustified, I don't know, but I love Michael.
Yeah, I do too. And I feel like one of the things is that they treat women as human beings in this space that are complex and interesting and messy and garbage, and, like, there's just so much going on. So I think Kristen Bell's character is really refreshing because she's kind of a piece of shit, and she's not.
Yeah.
It's not gendered in any way. Like her just being a crappy lady has nothing to do with her being a woman, and that is so rare, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I love how the show wrestles with this entirely false notion that, you know, you can be a good person. Like there's some, you know, kind of category of goodness that you can occupy that's independent of the way you behave, you know, and your likability. So the fact that, you know, these are all likable people that we all enjoy spending time with them, but that nevertheless, they have to wrestle with the fact that their actions in life have had consequences. It doesn't matter, you know, whether we want to get a beer with, you know, with the character or whether we think someone is funny or not. The fact that they didn't end up in the good place and they had to wrestle with that, and they have to try and negotiate like what it means to actually be a good person is really refreshing for me.
For me, the biggest laugh in season 2 probably was when so I love Jason Mendoza. He's so probably good. For me he's just so good. I don't know the actor's name, but the character, because he's so good at playing not bright, right? But he's hilarious. Yes. And there's a moment where he's the one who figures out that they're not in the good place, right? And Michael is like, oh man, Jason figured it out this time. that hurts. This is a real low point, you know. Like that was just like it was. Oh god, it was hilarious.
That actor Manny Jacinto, so good. When I want to say it might have been a couple of episodes back where he's talking to. Oh my God, he's talking about having gone to Leonard Skinner High School in North Jacksonville.
Oh my God.
I lost my mind.
Yes.
I lost my mind.
All right. So we jumped in so quickly to this, but I just kind of wanted to say, like, so the show is set up so that you, like, the reason I kind of want to explain it is so that people can have a sense of what the show is if they haven't seen it, because it starts in season 1 where these people go to the good place, which is ideally like heaven, and everybody else goes to the bad place, and the bad place is this horrible, horrible place that you keep hearing about, right? There's a huge cliffhanger that happens at the end of season 1, and it completely changes what happens in season 2. And it's so refreshing that a show can do that. Because, like, what if they didn't get renewed for a second season? Then it would have been nothing. But it seamlessly transitioned so well into a completely different direction. And I'm so impressed with the writing team on this show that they can do that.
Well, and part of the credit also should go to Ted Danson again, right? Because the slow realization that Michael is not, in fact, a good place architect, but is, in fact, a demon bad place architect, and the, like, evil, maniacal delight that slowly starts to light up his face is a wonder to see. You know, he plays that moment so well.
That subtle devilish quality underneath the veneer of being like this really kind guy is so great. And yeah, to credit the writers too, one thing I love about this show is that it's got so many jokes packed even into just the environment and the background, right? There are times where watching on Netflix, I would pause the frame so that I could read things on the screen, because it'll be like, you know, Michael will be introducing the good place, and our, you know, point system determined that you got here, and on the screen behind him it's showing all these things that earn you points or cost you points, and some of them are like, you know, ridiculous, like, you know, using someone else's toothbrush without telling them, like minus 10,000 points or whatever, you know. So I had to just stop and eat all that up, because it's just so well crafted with all those details.
One of the ones that I took a note of that I really liked was never discuss veganism unprompted is a list of things that give you points.
Yes.
It's really, and the conversation about, like, we are spoiling the fuck out of the show, but the conversation about the frozen yogurt and why they chose frozen yogurt.
Right.
Oh my God.
Good. It's so good. I highly recommend people watch this show.
Yeah, I can't say enough good stuff about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same.
Hey, Ebony.
Hey, Anita.
What's your deal this week?
Okay, my deal this week is as you know, Anita, I consider it my remit to keep you updated on the state of the cultural conversation about Black women's hair. So this week, what's my deal? Oh, by the way, I want to let folks know that we've heard from literal ones of you to say that What's Your Deal is in fact a great title.
Yes,
for this.
I only saw one person say that, so
right,
it's still subject to change.
What about this? What about the silent majority is what I propose.
I can't hear them.
Also, how about this? How about this, Anita? What's in the box? How's that for it? But you have to say it like Brad Pitt in Seven.
Okay,
what do you think about that as a title?
Not go there. And I thought you were doing a reference to the Justice League with that one because they were like the boxes,
the mother boxes.
It's not. The power isn't in the box. The power is the box.
If someone could hit me up on Twitter and explain in 3 sentences or less what the fuck was going on with those mother boxes,
no one cares.
I will PayPal you as many bitcoins as I have.
It didn't matter. It didn't.
All right, so
it didn't matter.
It didn't. Okay, so what's my deal this week? There is this hilarious new game called Hair Nah that's been blown up social media. Well, the Black Twitter party social media that I engage with. And it's essentially a game whereby you play as a Black woman who's trying to prevent white women from touching your hair. If you are a Black woman, you know this struggle. And so it's this wonderful game by, I think the designer's name is Momo Pixel. You can check it out at Hair Nah, so HAIRNAH.com. And it is fantastic. So you choose what your character looks like, and then on route, like the trouble is she's trying to travel somewhere without having these people get all up in her hair, and you just have to like block the shit out of these random white women's hands that come try and get all up in your stuff. And they say stuff like, "Ooh, is that really attached? Can I just touch it? It looks so fluffy. Is it real?" It's hilarious. It's hilarious.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, so you gotta try it. I'm obsessed with this game. Hair Nah.
That is amazing. Yep. That's so good. That's so needed too, right?
For real.
All right.
For real.
Carolyn, what's your deal this week?
Yo. Well, so recently this thing happened where, so the LA Times reported on Disney's or Disneyland's like business practices in Anaheim, and it was not a flattering report. And Disney responded to this by playing some really kind of unethical, messed up hardball and saying, okay, if you're going to do these kinds of news reports on us, LA Times movie critics don't get into Disney screenings or like all these screenings of Disney-owned studios. And what happened then, which was pretty awesome, is all these other outlets, news critics, film critics and media outlets stood in solidarity with the LA Times and were like, you can't do that. We're all going to not review your films then. And that means, no eligibility for these awards and et cetera, et cetera. And of course, Disney backed down and now LA Times film critics can go to Disney screenings again. And it just made me think about how, in the world of gaming journalism, there are, it's not unheard of for studios to blacklist a website if the website does a negative review of one of their games or does a report that kind of shines light on troubling labor practices or whatever. And when that happens, there's no collective response whatsoever, right? It's you're on your own. We're going to keep hitting embargo with the games that Bethesda is still sending us. And to me, that is legitimately, again, to use the tired phrase, an issue of ethics in game journalism, right? And so, and yet there's never been an uproar about that kind of thing. And so just to be reminded of oh, this is what an ethical kind of, a group of journalists who at least on some level are concerned with serving the needs of the people they write for. I guess it just was a reminder and a little frustrating that we don't see that in gaming journalism. So
yeah, totally.
That's kind of my deal.
I was also thinking around all of that because I 100% agree with you too. I was thinking about the differences between how publishers and studios are, that are hey, we're not going to give early code to review sites anymore, but they throw codes out to YouTubers and
Right.
streamers and all of that.
Yeah.
And so like I'm wondering, like, there's a bit of a difference there in this space where the pressure put on games studios, maybe even if there was pressure, wouldn't be quite as strong as something like a film review, because there isn't as big of a film reviewing culture thing that sort of grassroots that started up on YouTube. And I wonder how like that plays into the space and determination of like these PR companies and the choices that they're making.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been, I think a big shift in the last like 5 years or so with these YouTube, quote unquote influencers and stuff, becoming people that a lot of people go to for impressions or advice about like which games to buy and whatnot. And so, yeah, like definitely there was a sense, among some people who had been in gaming journalism a lot longer than I had, who had been in that space since like the mid or late 90s, that gaming companies really did see big gaming sites, as kind of an extension of PR, right? That was like the relationship. We let you in, give you access to do previews. We kind of expect you to give our games, good reviews. And if the sites kind of don't meet that, then that's viewed as a kind of like betrayal. And I don't know how much that has changed, but the relationship between like media and gaming publishers is not what it should be.
All right, my deal this week is that I marathoned all of the Twilight movies this
I cannot
weekend.
wait to hear the rationale for
now
this.
I did
So
not
AMA.
realize that you were such a big Twilight fan.
Why did I do that? Why?
That's our question for you, Anita.
That's the question on all of our minds.
I was staying with a friend, and she said, "Hey, do you want to watch all
A
the
good
Twilight
friend?
movies?" A good friend. Well, not
I
not
think you need
anymore.
to reassess. Right.
This is like the 12-hour cinematic equivalent of, oh, this milk smells bad. You want to smell this?
Right?
Yes. That is a very astute analogy. Yeah, she said, "Do you want to watch it?" And I said, "Sure." So that's how that happened. And then literally every second of the movies, both of us, but I was like, "Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Wow, this is terrifying. Why are we doing this?" Okay, so here's the thing. And part of the reason why I agreed was so Feminist Frequency started in 2009, and this was around the time, like right before this, when Twilight was a really, really big thing. And when I first started Feminist Frequency, I was like, I need to watch and read and do everything that everyone is talking about and be up on everything. And so I read all the Twilight books, and I watched the first two movies, and they're fucking horrifying. And actually, the very first Feminist Frequency episode that was ever made was about Twilight. And the reason that our initial tagline was called Conversations with Pop Culture was because I made a video to Bella about abusive predatory stalking behavior. That never got released, so y'all have no idea what I'm talking about because you've never seen it because it was
Bonus
so
content.
bad.
Bonus content.
Oh my God, it was so bad. Anyways, but I was really curious about the last two movies. Really, sorry. I was not really curious, but I was curious enough to say yes to this ridiculous endeavor.
Anita, just own it. It's okay.
It is. So there's a couple of things. They're terrible. They're just terrible films. They're boring as fuck. Like when you're not raging in anger at how like abusive these dudes are and how stupid she is, you're just like, oh my God, this is boring. And even the actors like eventually were just like, we don't want to do this anymore. Like this is the worst thing ever. But here's the thing is rewatching it like almost a decade later, it was such a huge cultural phenomenon. Like it was so massive, and it is utterly terrifying at how massive it was. Like the messages in it were just so atrociously awful. Like just in every way, right? You have this guy who has no life of his own. He's just super predatory and stalking, and he's obsessed with her. And then you have this other guy who's younger by 100 years, and he's such a racial stereotype in that he's like from an indigenous tribe or like, you know, an indigenous community, and they turn into wolves and they're hot-headed. Like it was just all stereotype upon stereotype. And so you have these dudes fighting over this woman who like is just supposed to be this Mary Sue, right? Like whatever. Everyone knows this. I don't need to explain the Twilight thing again. But it was
I have a question because you read the books and you saw the movies. And I know this is an old question, but, you know, I was so out of the age range of these books. Actually, I shouldn't say age range because they really crossed age boundaries.
Yeah,
but anyways,
they did.
I wasn't in the audience for it. Anyways, do they ever explain why his name is Edward, right? Robert Pattinson's character. Do they ever explain why he chooses to stay in high school?
Because they do it so that they can live somewhere for 4 years.
But so then they move every 4 years so that he can keep.
Yeah, they move every time. I can't believe I'm explaining the fucking lore of Twilight. They move every time that they can't. They move every time that it gets too weird that they're still the same age, theoretically.
Right, but my question is, why does he actually attend high school?
I don't fucking know.
But is that a question?
Don't logic this shit, Ebony. But okay, I want to say
this is a real, like, I don't understand why he would go to school.
It's because I think the idea is that, well, they're Mormons. I don't know. Like they're supposed to be a family.
Right, I get it, but
Stephenie
my point is like. My point is that, like, even from the beginning, Robert Pattinson looked like he was at least 18, right? And I think he was in his early 20s when these first started. So I'm saying, like, he volunteered to keep going to school. He didn't need to keep going to school. He wanted to keep being in high school. I don't get it.
I don't know. This is the least of the questions that need to be asked.
I won't say
Twilight.
it's my only stumbling block, but it was a...
The last thing I want to say about this, though, is part of my morbid curiosity was because she gets pregnant and gets turned into a vampire, and I wanted to see how they dealt with that. And with Renesmee, which is the dumbest fucking name ever, but whatever. But the scenes in which, like, the way they play that out in the film is so god awful terrifying. Like, they CGI. So Kristen Stewart is tiny. She is a tiny human. Like, she's super, super thin. And because it's like this demon spawn inside of her sucking the morsels out of her fucking being or whatever. They CGI her to be like, as if she weighs like 40 pounds. It's so disgusting. And then when she's going into labor and like watching the baby like rip itself out and then them all rip the baby out of her, it is so terrifying. And then, okay, so at the end of the third movie, you realize that they have to turn her into a vampire for her to survive. And then the beginning of the fourth movie, you see that she's a vampire. And so at the beginning of the fourth movie, she literally says, "I was born to be a vampire." Like, she's so natural at it. And I was like,
let her live her truth.
Anyways, that's all I'm going to say about that. I can't believe I wasted my life.
I can't believe we don't have a side podcast about you telling me that my questions about Twilight are dumb, but I keep peppering you with them because I do have a lot of questions. And I can tell you, I'm never, ever going to read those books or watch the movie. So you're my source of information.
You should definitely not do that. But this is our show, y'all. Thank you for joining us. You can catch us back here every single Wednesday. I want to thank our amazing, wonderful Drip backers. Again, you are so, so, so great. Drip is Kickstarter's brand new subscription-based crowdfunding platform. We are listener-supported, and every dollar you contribute goes directly to producing this podcast. So by pitching in, you are joining our growing feminist frequency community, and we want you to be a part of this. We've got some great rewards for you as well, so please head over to d.rip/femfreak and pitch in whatever you can. If you like our show, we have a small favor to ask you, or I guess another favor to ask you, because that was kind of a favor too, right? Wherever you are listening to this, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Google Play, please leave us a little review. It really helps us spread the word about the show. And, actually tell your friends maybe too. They might like this as well. You can check out all of our work, our other podcasts, our videos, and everything at feministfrequency.com. And you can find each of us on Twitter. I am at Anita Sarkeesian.
I'm at Carolyn Michelle.
I'm at POTUS44.
Yeah, good. Or you can find her at Ebony Aster because she loves being added at.
I do love being added at, but just know that no matter what corrections, questions, interesting things you want to tell me, I take none of it on board. None of it.
All right. Our producers are Max Jacobs and Phil Circus, who also composed our theme music. And we will see you all next week. Bye.
Bye, all.
Bye.